What's going on, everybody? Gentleman94 here. Welcome back to Ben Builds. This is episode 16 of our F-105 Thunderchief. And today, as you can see, we've got the F-105 in front of us, and it has been clear coated with a gloss coat. We use Future floor polish right out of the bottle, airbrushed at about 15 psi, making sure not to get too much overspray, and just coat the entire aircraft with this protective covering. We also have finished up the bombs. The bombs are ready to go. We need to mount those, give them a final coat of weathering. As you can see, the yellow strips are on the noses and they look decent. Like I said in the last episode, I didn't want to have to paint all of these individual strips, so I just used the kit decals. Turned out fine. I mean, they're bombs, right? It's all good. So now, today, we're going to focus on decaling the entire 105, which does not seem to be a very easy task, guys. It's going to be a bit of work. So let's go ahead and pull out our decals and we'll get this show on the road. We don't need the model kit right in front of us. Let's put that aside for right now. We're going to need some basic tools for decaling, and if you guys want a more in-depth look at how I decal models, check out the video I did way back in the early days of my channel that is just basically how to decal. So you check out that video. It's a very popular video, actually the most popular video on my channel, which hopefully is good because I'm helping people. I'm hoping people are getting some stuff out of it. So let's go over just briefly what we're going to need. We're going to need the decal placement chart, of course, to know where exactly we're going to start and where we're going to finish. We're going to need the decals. The nose art comes separately from the decal sheet, so we have that set aside off camera. And we're just going to use these basic decals to go ahead and figure out what we're going to need and where they're going to go. I like to work in a certain order. I like to work from the front of the nose of the aircraft to the back tail cone, usually working on either the right or left side. Then I flip it over and I start on the tail cone and work my way to the nose. Now, it's a good idea to group decals into the proper groupings that they're going to need to be in. For example, these stars and bars, no matter what version you're going to use or you're going to decal, the stars and bars are going to be the same for both. So we want to go ahead and separate decals into groups. We're going to get those separated. We're going to get the stencils separated, the tail markings, get those separated as well. We're going to get everything cut out. We don't need the instrument panels. We're going to cut those out, put those aside. You might want to hold on to some of these decals because you never know when they're going to come in handy. I've got a box full of excess decals I just keep. I use them more often than you think. I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of these decals, get everything set aside, ready to go, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got the decals cut up into their individual groupings. I've got the water here ready to go. I've got my Microsol Microset plus my Microsol Microset brushes. Now you can use the same brush for both, but make sure you wash out the brush in between usages. It's just a good idea. Now let's go ahead and get our paper towel ready, and we're going to start with the very front nose area on the left side of the aircraft, working our way to the back tail cone, flip it around, work tail cone to nose. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to need the first decal, and we need a reverse set of tweezers, and we want to dip that into the water for approximately 5 seconds. Sometimes you can go over a bit if they're really thick decals, or if they're really thin decals, you might want to give it just half that. So just be careful with it. Now once it's ready to go ahead and drop it onto either your surface here. Let the water soak in and release that decal from the backing. Now I want a little more water on the decal, so we're just going to tweeze it up, get a little more water on it, and then we're going to position it where we think we need it to go. We're going to hold down the decal with our finger, slide the backing out from underneath the decal. Once we have that approximately where we need it to go, we're going to take a dull blade hobby knife and just shift it down to the exact area that I want it. Looks pretty good right there. And then we're going to use a cotton swab, cotton bud, Q-tip, whatever you want to call them, and just roll that along the decal. I just like to roll it. I don't like to drag it because I might drag the decal and misshapen it. So we're going to move on from there, and we're going to get the front of the nose done, and then apply some Microsol. Let that dry, move on to the next section. I like to section off my aircraft when I go ahead and do decaling. The next decal we're going to need to put on for the nose is actually the red outline around the mid-air refueling probe. So let's get that in the water, let that sit for about 5 seconds, pull it out, place it on the mat, let it sit, continue our process. Okay, so I went ahead and I jump cut here to the end of the process because there's a lot of decals on this thing, and I don't want to have to waste your time watching me apply every single one of them. So this is how the model turned out, using the exact same ideas and the same procedures as I have done for the first decal all the way to the last decal. You can see the nose art here. Nose art was a little tricky to place. Everything is covered in Microset initially. Decal is placed, and then Microsol is spread out evenly over the top of the decals. left to dry, and we come up with this. So all in all, I think it looks pretty good, guys. Looks very clean. We'll hopefully figure that out a little later. Now these are the last bit of decals we have left to put on. These are the front, I think, anti-static tape, I think is what they're called. We're going to put these on after everything else is done, because we have to unmask the canopy. I don't want to unmask the canopy until after we're very, very certain that we're good with any top coats or any clear coats. So let's take a look quickly at the bombs here while that decal's dry, because you want to let the decals dry for a good amount of time. You don't want to do anything rash and end up misshapening or possibly tearing or anything like that. You don't want to take a chance of damaging the decals. So we're going to move on to our bombs. And as you can see, I've got the below drag bombs, we've got the M117s, and we've got the center ejector rack. Now the ejector rack itself, I'm not sure how I'm going to actually attach it to my custom made pylon. I have to look at my reference photos and figure out how they did that. But the bombs are going to have to be individually attached to the center ejector rack. So let's go ahead and we're going to pull out our instructions here for the Hasagawa weapon set A. We're going to look and figure out what we need to mount the bombs to the racks. So do some studying. We'll be right back. Okay, so we are back, and I figured out we need these very small T-shaped plastic connectors. And they're very small. They don't have any locating pins on the bottom side of them, so we're just going to have to figure out how these are going to go into the ejector rack. It's a little bit of a T-shape, and there are some indentations in the top here. So we could just take this and glue this down directly onto the bomb, covering the locating pins here, and then glue that down and just place them onto the kit. That's probably our best bet to do. Okay, so here we are. As you can see here, we've got the drop tanks and the wingtip munitions attached on. Looks pretty good. Looks decent. And this is the hardest here, the center ejector rack. This is how we turned out here. I tell you guys, I mean, everything looks pretty good. That nose art is still a little risque. And it's not positioned exactly correct. It's a little bit more towards center line. But because I had no choice, I didn't want to cover up the red around the mid-air refueling probe. So it's a little off center, which is actually the way it is on the real aircraft. Hopefully it gives a good impression. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and call it here. We have to let these decals dry for a good amount of time. We don't want to come back, overcoat them when they're not dry and they're not cured. So this is a good stopping place. I like how the decals turned out. We're going to go ahead and let it sit for a bit. We're going to let the bombs dry, finish off everything there we need to do. We'll most likely attach the centerline rack off camera. It's just going to be a matter of just 2 drops of probably super glue, and then just sticking that bomb rack on, positioning it about where it needs to be, and then just gluing it on. I'm going to use super glue on it, and just in case I don't quite get it right, I can just snap it off, because it's not going to meld plastic to plastic. Otherwise, though, we're going to let this dry, let this cure. Until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next time on Ben Builds, episode 17. We're getting close to the end, guys. Hang in there. We're almost there.